Despite the ambiguity in the descriptions of the beast of Revelation, we've been able to glean some fair amount of information without stepping outside of the Bible. Especially, we've seen that the seven-headed beast represents both a kingdom and kings of that kingdom. We saw this in Hank Hanegraaff's book, The Apocalypse Code. But the most particular identifier is the notorious number of the beast, 666. The number puzzle used here is an example of Gematria, which is the practice of transforming names into numbers, which was common in antiquity. I'm quoting Hanegraaff there again. The number of the beast is the number of a man. To save time and space, I'll try to limit the use of evidences to prove this point, but that sixth king, whose number is 666, is Nero Caesar. Nero was described in his own time by use of another gematria, was called a beast by contemporary historians, and also was known as the tyrant. As previously mentioned, in John's time, there was already at least one instance of gematria connected to him, as a clever numerical cryptogram circulated during Nero's reign that reflected the widespread knowledge that Nero had indeed killed his own mother. That again is from Hanegraaff's book, The Apocalypse Code. The number isn't a sequence of 3 sixes, as we say 666, but it is specifically 666. When Nero Caesar is rendered in Hebrew, this is the numeric equivalent of his name. This kind of gematria riddle was common at the time, but it took until the 18th century for Western scholars to make the Nero discovery. One argument by critics against the identification of Nero as the 666 beast is that it appears to require a spelling error in the Hebrew to make the math work out. This argument isn't valid, though. This is a quote, "Archaeological finds document that a first-century Hebrew spelling of Nero's name provides us with precisely the value of 666. The name is Nero Caesar." Gentry cites this in his book, Navigating the Book of Revelation. As well, in fact, Jastrow's famous lexicon of the Talmud contains this very spelling in the Jewish era. Though many have misread the evidence and presumed that Emperor Domitian was the tyrant represented in Revelation, or that Christian persecutions were more prevalent under Domitian's reign, this was not the case. Gentry gives ample and sustained evidence that Nero better fits these descriptors, and that Nero was the first emperor to persecute Christians. It's now widely acknowledged that his persecutions were not only the first, but were by far more severe. In fact, the Domitian persecutions themselves are now in doubt altogether. Nero was a madman. He hated Christians and was given to all manner of despicable sins. He even dressed himself in the skins of animals, infamously taking on the appearance of a beast, and attacked the genitals of men and women whom he had lashed to stakes for punishment and death. In keeping with what the later chapters indicate about this beast, Nero is also the sixth emperor, the sixth head described in Revelation. He was followed by the short reign of a seventh, Galba, who lasted only 7 months. Confusing the matter somewhat is the fact that although John has referred to the beast from the sea as the sixth, he also seems to call the beast an eighth. With Nero established by history as the sixth king or Caesar, and the short-lived Galba as the seventh, who or what is the eighth, the beast who appears to have died and come back to life? Quoting Gentry in Navigating the Book of Revelation, the beast is personified in Nero. So what do we make of him being an eighth? How is an eighth one of the seven in Revelation 17:11? Here John seems to be referring not to the individual man, but the corporate beast, the Roman Empire. At Nero's death, the empire seemed to have gone into death throes. Rome descended into a bloody civil war and seemed to be on the precipice of its own demise. The Julian line of Caesars also ended with Nero's suicide, so the monarchy itself was dead. At this point, however, Vespasian ascended to the throne and the empire was resurrected. Regarding an eighth and the resurrected empire, Gentry writes that in biblical numerics, 8 seems to be the number of resurrection. The 8th day is the Lord's Day, the day Jesus was resurrected. It is also the day the leper and the menstruating woman are deemed clean. They're deemed alive again under the Levitical law in the Pentateuch. When we are told the beast was and is not and is about to come, he is a parody not of the eternal God, but of the resurrected Christ. The resurrection of the corporate entity, Rome, as the beast, is a mimicry of Jesus' resurrection. When John says he is not, he's emphasizing the eventual demise of the beast, whereas Jesus lives and reigns forever. The beast will return up out of the abyss, but he will not last forever. The mockery is of Christ's death and resurrection experience, not God's eternality. The beast receives his great power from the abyss, from Satan, but he is still going to destruction in Revelation 17. This is in Gentry's book, Navigating the Book of Revelation.